So Totem is a Canadian company, and I am located in Canada as well. And after begging and begging to review some Totem speakers on my channel, I had very little luck getting Totems into my channel. So instead, I decided to save up and purchase one of the Totem speakers. And my choice was the Totem Tribe Towers. Now, these speakers were attractive to me because I actually heard them at shows before and found them to be very impressive. So to me, it was a good starting point. So I purchased these and I decided to review them. Now, my original plan, because I am not financially rich, was to purchase the speaker, listen to it, review it, and sell it back so that I get some of the money back at the very least. Well, I may actually keep these speakers because these are perhaps one of the best speakers I've ever heard. Now here's my story with the Totem Tribe Towers. So when I first picked them up and actually bought them, these are not cheap speakers. These are $5,300 US, and that's the start. I believe it goes all the way up to $5,800 depending on the finish. So when I first picked them up, usually when I buy speakers at this price point, especially a floor standard, I expect some type of heft to the weight. And to my surprise, they were not that heavy, so I was a little bit disappointed. And when I actually got the box and unboxed them in the studio, I was even more surprised to find out that these are very tiny towers. And despite seeing them at shows before, they seemed a lot smaller in my room. So I was quite surprised and felt a little bit underwhelmed by the looks. Because let's face it, it has 4-inch woofers and a 1.3-inch soft dome tweeter. And that's about it. It is a pretty slim design. It is very, very slim and small for a floor standard. So I was ready to be disappointed. So I played them, and that's when I realized that everything I knew about physics was just thrown out the window, just gone. Because these small speakers produce bass down to 30 Hz and even more in my room than any other speakers in this size. And scratch that for a minute. I mean, I've heard the Wilson audio speakers, granted not in my room, and I've heard Vocals, I've heard many speakers, Magicals, B&W, you name it. These have something that attributes to what I describe as a high-end bass authority. And what that means is that when I hear speakers like Wilson Audio, for example, they have this heft and body to the sound that has a weighty feeling to it. And I always thought this weightiness was due to the weight of the speakers. So high-end speakers that were really heavy, I thought gave that kind of grounding bass authority due to its heavy weighted nature. That's what I believed until I heard these speakers. No bookshelf speaker, even though it has all the way down to 20 Hz or 30 Hz, whatever these bookshelf speakers are rated for these days, don't have the bass authority like the Wilson Audio speakers do, or the Magicals do, or the Vocals do, when they say they are rated down to 20 Hz or 30 Hz or whatnot. These totems actually do have that authority in the bass region, that weighty nature. And that's what surprised me the most, because these are light speakers. They're not heavy by any means of a stretch. They're not big or intrusive like a lot of the high-end speakers that I've encountered that produce this weighty bass. So for example, when I'm listening to tracks like Electrified or Bass I Love You or James Blake, Limit to Your Love, all these tracks have really deep bass energy. And it's not just the bass being reproduced, you feel and you experience the weighty nature of the speakers being grounded, the sound and the bass being grounded. And of course, this may sound gibberish or you may think I'm crazy by explaining bass in this way, but for those of you that have experienced it, you understand what I'm talking about, because this nature of feeling the weight, the groundedness of the bass, if you so will, is something that can't not simply be described into words other than the way that I'm explaining right now, and I'm trying to describe it the best I can. Now that's the first thing that impressed me. And then there became the mid-range and the high frequency. Now, I'm gonna save the mid-range for last because it's the best. But when it comes to the high frequency is what you can expect of a good soft dome tweeter, but at the same time, it's not rolled off in any way. It is detailed, but it's not sharp or harsh. I would say it's about on the borderline, at least to my taste, of what I would describe as harsh. It's not harsh, it is just on the borderline. And depending on the track you listen to, at loud volumes, it can be a little bit tad hot on the top end. Now, when it comes to the mid-range is something that you appreciate in the long term. Meaning, when I first listened to it, there was no wow factor. I just thought it was really great. It was on point. It sounded like how it should sound in the mid-range. However, after listening to the speaker for a long period of time, because I went to other speakers in between to review them, every other speaker in the studio sounded like they were broken in comparison. And that's a big statement to make, because a lot of these speakers are excellent speakers for the money, just excellent in general. However, the tone of the totems make it so that every other speaker almost sound like they're broken. The tone on the totems are just spectacular. I mean, it is so close to the real thing that it just blows my mind. And I play instruments. I play saxophone, guitar, and as you guys probably know, I do play a lot of instruments, and I used to mix and master a lot of these instruments and vocals. So having that realistic tone is very important to me, and I talk about tone a lot on this channel, but that's because that's what's important to me when I'm listening to music. And don't get me wrong, the tone on many of the speakers these days are excellent. However, the totems just take it to a different level to where each instrument now sounds to me broken in comparison when I'm listening to with other speakers. So that's what impressed me the most with this speaker, is the tone. Now, how can this possibly be? How does this small speaker with 4-inch drivers produce the bass that I'm describing here? Well, this punchy and dynamic bass is perhaps due to their torrent driver. Now, a lot of research and thought has gone into their driver design. These are not cheap drivers. These are excellent drivers that they manufacture, and it speaks volume to what they have accomplished, because along with the 2 ports in the back of the speaker, I'm sure, which takes effect to the bass, and also the 4-inch drivers, it is producing pounding bass and extension that just defies physics, just absolutely defies physics. Now, another thing special about these drivers is that these are crossover-less drivers, meaning there's no crossover that needs to be compensating for these drivers. And I remember that virtually every speaker engineer that I've spoken to said the exact same thing. No crossover is the best crossover. So that speaks volume to how coherent this speaker can be. The frequency range that I hear is just incredibly smooth and well integrated, so that I don't hear the individual drivers. They're seamless as it gets. And the imaging is absolutely spectacular. I get a very sharp center imaging to the side. In the soundstage is just incredible because how slim these speakers are. It mimics a lot of what a bookshelf speaker can do in terms of imaging and sound staging. So the woofers don't have a crossover. However, the tweeter has a first order crossover. So basically a capacitor on there. And this capacitor is Clarity Audio capacitors, which I absolutely love Clarity Audio capacitors, as you guys know. And I am just astonished by the sound quality that these speakers are able to provide without a complicated crossover. It's just so more clean, fast, and crisp. The transients is just incredible. And if you never heard a Totem speaker, this is not a speaker that wows you right off the bat. It is not something that you sit down and go, whoa, this is just life-changing. No, it is only after the fact that you listen to it for a little bit of time that you realize, damn, this speaker really can reproduce some accurate tone and bass that just defies physics and the weight. And you just keep realizing that this may be one of the best values if you were looking for a high-end speaker, let's say in a condo or in a smaller space. But before you consider that, although these speakers can be working in a smaller space, there is something that you need to realize, and it's that they need some room from the back wall. Because they are ported in the back and they chuff out a lot of energy, you have to realize that these will load the room with heavy bass if you have them too close to the back wall. And although Totem does claim that they can be placed close to the wall, that wasn't my entire experience. I did need to pull them out into the room a little bit to get a good bass response instead of one that was just booming and being muddied in the room. But then again, because they are so small and slim speakers, pulling them out into the room or giving them a little bit of space around them to breathe was no brainer and no problem really. They're not intrusive, they're just slim. So that was not a big task. So I would have to say these are incredible in terms of its flexibility and placement. If you want a little bit more sharper sound and better imaging, then you just tilt them a little bit towards you. And if you want a little bit more soundstage, a little bit more holographicness, then you just tilt them out towards the room like you would with a traditional speaker. So these speakers are excellently designed. They are just spot on with tone, phase, and just all those things that, little things that really make these speakers spectacular in its price point. Now in terms of amplification, I used multiple amplifiers with the Totems, including tube amplifiers that I had, the 805 tubes on the Wilsonton, and also the NAD, C298, Leak Audio Stereo 150, and many others along the way. But the point being is that these are not very hard to drive. These are 89 dB in sensitivity. They are a 4 ohm speaker. They do like a little bit more juice if you want that pounding bass. But for the most part, these can be enjoyed with a tube amplifier or a low wattage solid state amplifier like the First Watt. These can work like with a 50 watt amplifier depending on the room size, of course. And I do have to say, I think that these speakers do compete 5 times above its price point and competes with speakers like Sonos Faber, Wilson Audio, Sabrina speakers or Sabrina X speakers, and Focal speakers, BMW speakers. I think it competes all of those in that region. And in fact, actually, I prefer these speakers above those speakers or any other speakers really in terms of tone as of now. So I think it's safe to say that these are my favorite speakers up to date, even compared to Sonos Faber speakers or Wilson Audio speakers that I love so much. And I have to say, I would love to keep these as long as I am not broke and need the money. I really do want to keep these, or at least move up in the Totem line to see what they can possibly offer. So that's it from me. Thank you for watching. I hope this video was helpful to you. And if it was, please do consider subscribing and also consider helping us on our Patreon page to keep us independent and keep these honest videos and reviews coming. Until next time.